Awesome. What else? What you guys do for Father's Day yesterday? You had a pie. Awesome. What else? Anyone else? Wife bought you a cake for me. Had a meal with your dad. Awesome. Father-son cycling. That's nice, William. Drank beer with your wife and daughter. Awesome. Musang King. Yeah, the price has came down for Musang King right now. There you go. Makan durian. Wow, daughter baked a carrot cake. Awesome. What else do you guys do? Seafood lunch. Awesome. Family gathering dinners. Okay. Cool, cool. Anyone else? What did you guys do for Father's Day yesterday? Like there are like 10 fathers here in 200 people. So I don't know what happened. What happened, guys? Anyone else? What's that one thing you would do during Father's Day? Here you go. Pork chop. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We have over 200 people and probably a little bit more will be coming on soon. But today is a very special session that we had. We had kind of taken a pause from virtual training for the last week as we were doing kind of regional training for the leadership of KW Malaysia. We kind of went through something called a digital mini FSO. And it was very encouraging to see all the leaders highly engaged and working together on a virtual platform, trying to kind of piece the next 30, 60, 90 days for the entire region of Malaysia and in all market centers. But today we are in for a treat. We've got a KW's Maps coach all the way from Fort Collins, Colorado. Did I say that correctly, Elizabeth?
You sure did, Jonathan. Thank you. My pleasure to be here with you all.
There you go. So she came highly recommended from Gabby Brendan Schultz. For those who remember the energetic Gabby that came on call with us a couple of months ago, and Gabby highly recommend Elizabeth to be kind of sharing with us the concept of the one thing. And really, without further ado, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us all the way from Colorado. The time and the floor is yours right now. So take us away,
thank you.
Elizabeth.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules and choosing to end your day with us. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared and kick us off. All right. I trust everyone can see my screen. So I want to thank everyone just for the opportunity to come and share something that I'm quite passionate about. I have had the pleasure of being with Keller Williams. This is my 15th year come October under the leadership of Gary Keller and all his wise wisdom. I call him Grandpa Gary in my heart because he's always so smart and so ahead of helping us all build the kind of careers and the kind of businesses that we thrive to have. And a lot of the principles from the one thing really hone in on the business part, right? We can sell houses, but how do we run a business? How do we build a schedule? How do we set our goals? And how do we live by them? So some of these tools that we're going to go through today on how to helping us to live our one thing. Now, right now, it's a great time of year to look at resetting our goals. Now, when we talk about resetting our goals, we're not talking about changing them. We're talking about resetting the priorities to help us reach our goal, right? For those of you that had the pleasure of being with me in family reunion in Dallas in February of this year, it seemed like such a long, long, long time ago because so much has happened in our world. And so what a great time now to say, how do I reset my priorities so that I can still achieve the goals that I was looking to achieve? And that's what we're going to do this afternoon, or this evening rather, for you. So as Jonathan shared, my name is Elizabeth Curry. I am a one thing practice leader, and I have the privilege of being a MAPS coach for the last 5 years. So let's talk about resetting. Resetting is everything that is about reflecting, evaluating, simplifying, establish a plan, and time blocking. So we are resetting how we look at our priorities, where we spend our time, how we establish our plan so that we can hit our goal for the end of the year. At its core, what is reset? So if you're Keller Williams, we are the company of acronyms, right? We are the company that everything means something different. So here's our reset acronym. Reset is so that we can reflect on the past and decide on our futures. This is an opportunity for you to be able to move forward with confidence. There's nothing good, there's nothing bad. We suspend all judgment and we just take an honest look at how have you gotten where you are? This is a great area for you to think back at, what do I do really, really well? What can I do that I've done really well that I could do in the future that would help me support my goal for the end of the year? E is for evaluate. Evaluate your priorities to pursue the right goals, right? We can do all sorts of things. For those of you that have gotten into the One Thing, the book, Gary talks about there's all these things that you should do. There's all these things that you can do. However, what's really the one thing that if you did it, everything else would become easier or unnecessary? So pursuing the right goals in order of priority. Simplify instead of overcomplicate. Narrow down your focus by asking yourself, if you could only accomplish one thing, what would it be? And then to establish a plan to achieve better results in less time. Pick one tool. So if the GPS works really well for you, if your 411 works really well for you, pick one tool that you're going to choose in our time together today to hit the reset button with. And then time block, right? Easier said than done. Time block your actions that have the fastest track to extraordinary results. It really comes down to that one thing. Right? Some of the people that I'm entrusted to be in business with, I share with them that your time blocking means that you are making an appointment with your future book of business. And what does that look like for you? So let's do our first exercise this morning. For those of you, again, that have seen the One Thing, this is found on page 114. The concept of what is your one thing in multiple areas of your life. So for example, what is the one thing that I could do that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? So as you look at these 7 circles, take a moment and you're going to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being, yeah, I'm really, really strong in this area, and with 1 being, I'm not so strong. I want to gain some strength there. So you're going to take a minute and you're going to rate yourself for every one of these circles. So your spiritual life, I'm going to break this down for you as you start thinking about this. Your spiritual life is, we all know, wonder where we came from, right? Your physical health, we only have one body. How are we treating it? Your finances, well, that's where our money goes, our legacy. Your personal life, that's your relationship. So that's maybe your family, your friends. That's who is it that you are at your very core. Your business is for the business that you run overall as a real estate business. Your job is your career as a realtor. And then your key relationships could be your mentors, your coaches, people that are in your world that are really, really important to you. Which of these areas are you the most confident in? And what's one area that you would just like to reset your priority? As you rate yourself, consider that the circle that you may want to focus in on doesn't have to be the weakest and it doesn't have to be the strongest. It's just the one that you choose to desire to reset that needs the most of your focus right now. Now let's dig in. Reflect. So I trust that you all are in a comfortable setting where you can sit back and you can think, let's go back and pretend that the last 6 months were the trailer of a movie. I want you to sit back, close your eyes, nice deep breath, and we're going to take a trip back in time. Think about what was the most important thing to you in these last 6 months. Think about where you were. Maybe we're all going back to being in Dallas at family reunion. Maybe you're watching the live stream from Malaysia. Think about where you were 5, 6 months ago. What is it that you're envisioning? What was important to you? You're thinking about that moment and you're wondering, what is it going to be like to achieve your goal this year? You imagine yourself accomplishing it. Think about what that does for you. How does that make you feel? Imagine that we're all in a movie theater, which that in and of itself is a dream right now. Think about yourself in that movie theater and you're watching that trailer, and your trailer is your life and it's playing out in front of you. You look at the screen and you see something that reminds you of a good time, something that brings a smile to your face. Think about what it would look like for you to reflect on the last 6 months as if it was a movie trailer and how great this feels. What was that experience for you? Was it easy for you to recall? Maybe you have to go through your date book or your planner, your digital calendar, maybe even go back through your pictures and say, what was I even doing 6 months ago? I don't know about you guys, the last 90 days seems like a fast forward of a movie blur. Have to go back and think about what were those things that we were even doing. As you open your eyes and you see where you're at in your present location, what are some of the things, and go ahead and jot these down, what are some of the things that came to your mind? Were you taking an adventure with your family? Were you planning a trip? Jot down some of the images that are still very fresh in your mind from playing the movie trailer. And now let's evaluate, what all did we look at? Let's look at our goals. Take a moment and use the evaluation sheet to look at your priorities so that you can pursue the right goal. And so jot down the top 3 goals that you had for yourself this year. And you're going to go ahead and write them on the column to the left. The top 3 goals that you had for this year. And as you write them down, go ahead and rank yourself. Use the emojis, use a happy face, a smiley face. Maybe you want to give yourself a check or a thumbs up to say, I'm on track. We are either really behind on our goal, we are on track, maybe we're even ahead of our goal. I'm watching some great things come out of real estate as we look at the opportunity that this time has given us. Rate yourself on where you are. And after you've had a chance to do that, let's look at how we can simplify. After you've evaluated where your priorities are at, let's go ahead and simplify this instead of overcomplicate it. So thinking about the fact that everything does not matter equally. It becomes easier to say no when you are clear on what you're saying yes to. So for example, if in my time block, it is today to spend some time with Malaysia, which it is, I am saying no to a variety of other things. And I consciously appreciate that because this is my one thing right now. It's spending time with you. So think about where in your world, when you look at your digital calendar or you look at your paper planner, as Gary recommends, where in your world are you spending time in that doesn't support your goal? What do you need to say no to so that you can say yes to your business and your priorities? This is what it looks like to simplify. I have this great story that comes out of the one thing. You know that when Steve Jobs took over Apple, there were over 350 different projects that were on the deck at Apple. And Steve was like, there's just no way that we're going to be able to handle all 350 projects. So the first thing he did when he took over the company as CEO was dig in. And 2 years later, they came out with 10 products that they were going to focus in on. So from 350, they ended up with 10 products. That means he had to say no to 340 other things. When you gain clarity on what you're saying yes to, you know what you have to say no to. Extraordinary results come from doing what matters the most. Not everything, just what matters the most. And life gets simpler when you start to narrow your focus. Right? One of the lies of productivity is saying no. No is a thief to productivity. So as you look at your pages in your handout around simplify, look at the roles that you play. Right? Jonathan talked about, Father's Day at the kickoff of our call. So imagine, what are the roles that you play in your life? Your mom, your dad, maybe you're your own business owner, maybe you are a sister, a father, a brother. Think about all the roles that you are in your life. What are some of the roles that maybe are not serving you? What are some of the roles that you need to pay more attention to? And then who are the people in your life that absolutely drain you and don't bring any value? We don't have to say no to them. We just have to put them somewhere else. They just may not be our priorities, right? We all have different circles in our world. Think about the projects. What are some of the projects that you're involved in that maybe right now are not serving you? I shared with a group a couple of weeks ago that I volunteer here in my community. And 90 days ago, I had to stop volunteering temporarily because I had to focus in on helping the people that I work with and hold team meetings. And Gary told us to pivot, right? Gary 90 days ago said, pivot your GPS, get a different plan. The world has changed. And so our world changed 90 days ago. Did you change your priorities? Did you shift them? Consider the kind of things that are maybe your commitments that you need to say yes to, like saying following your time schedule, your time block, the commitments to your goal. Think about how excited you were when you set your goal originally. And then, oh, the distractions, the shiny objects everywhere, they glitter. They're constantly wanting our attention, our notifications. What are the distractions that are most likely to take you away from your one thing? Before I began my time with you today, I shut off all the notifications on my screen so that I would not be distracted, so that I would be present here with you in Malaysia. What do you need to say no to? And then this one's one of my favorites. What have you learned about yourself? What are you really, really, really good at that you just need to do more consistently? The last 90 days have changed us as humans. We've had to adapt to a certain environment. Right? Gary reminds us that our environment has to match your goals. Well, what happens when your environment is not the perfect environment? How do you combat that? How do you get around it? What have you learned about yourself that you can use as a strength? And then let's look at this whole establishing of a routine, the whole cycle. The one thing refers to this as the productive system. So when you look at the productive system, you're looking at what are the different tools. So we start out with your someday goals. And someday goals, I want to encourage you folks, dream big. Think about, where do you want to be in 5 years? Gary Keller teaches us in the MREA, you can be anywhere you want to be in 5 years. Well, where do you want to be in 5 years? Think about how old you'll be, how old your children will be if you've got them. Where will you be in your life in 5 years? Think really, really big. What is that someday 5-year goal? And then work yourself back into, well, if I'm going to be there in 5 years, where do you need to be in 3 years? And once you look at where you're at in your 3 years, where do you need to be next year? And what does the next 6 months look like? In a time when there's so much uncertainty, the only thing that you can count on are your own actions. It's the only thing you can control. So what would those actions look like? When you think about setting your goal, think about what that goal is going to do for you. And yes, we're all in sales and it's great to have number 1 units, number 1 volume, and that's beautiful. But ask yourself, what does that really do for me? What does that do for your family? Why is that goal important to you? and then get into a GPS. And a GPS is your one-page business plan. And I'd like to break down what the GPS actually is. So the GPS stands for goal, priorities, and strategies. So what is your goal for the rest of the year? What are your 3 priorities? And your priorities, they should be measurable and they should be very specific. So if I'm going to sell 100 homes and that's my goal for the year, then my priority needs to say, I'm going to list 120 homes. Making your priorities very specific and very measurable. And in order of priority. So if we have 3 priorities, Gary teaches us that you're going to earn the right to move on to the next priority. So it is literally one thing at a time. When I build my GPS for the year, I take my GPS and I fold it up and I pretend that I don't have a 2 and a 3 priority. If I could only do 1, if I accomplish that 1 priority, is that enough for me to hit my goal for the year? And then the strategies underneath your priority. So if my priority is to list 120 homes, my strategy may be to talk to everybody in my database every quarter. And so if that's one of my strategies, your strategies need to be action-based, also very specific. It'd be great if they're measurable. Sometimes it's a challenge to make your actions measurable. And yet putting it all together in your GPS so that you have your goals, you know what your priorities are, and you know what your strategies look like. Now, once you've built your GPS, and ideally we're building our GPS once a year, this particular year, it was March for us when Gary asked us to pull out your GPS and he said, make a pivot edition. Take your GPS and pivot it. It's got to look a little different. So what that meant for our business owners is that maybe door knocking, we can't do it right now. So we had to pivot our GPS and change it. So if we're not going to door knock, what activity are we doing? Don't be afraid to pivot your goals and how you accomplish things when things aren't working the way that we want them to, right? If you folks are familiar, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, after you've given something an attempt, ask yourself, okay, how many more times am I going to do that? Knowing that it's not working for me. Pivot it, change it. So when you've got your GPS built out, then we segue into our 411, and the 411 is really where it gets really, really content and focused. So your GPS is broad, it's got your priorities, it's got your strategies. When you break it down into your 411, it stands for 4 weeks, 1 month, and 1 year. So ideally, you're taking your goal from your GPS and you're plopping it right over onto your goal for your 411. So your goal for the year and the goal for the 411 and the GPS is the same goal. And then you break it down to where you're at. So ideally, right now, we're in the middle of the year. You can say, okay, if my goal was to sell 100 houses and I've only sold 40, I've got 60 for the year. Am I still committed to that goal? And if I am, what are then the priorities? And I consult my GPS and I grab my priorities and I build them into my 411. Now, once I've looked at where I'm at for the month and the year of your 411 can very easily be goal focused. By the time you get down to the week, that's where it's got to get action based. And so if I'm going to list 10 houses, what are the actions necessary in order for me to list those houses? So that's where maybe my database calls come in. That's where my social media engagement and posts come in. So you're asking yourself, what are the actions that you're going to take? Now, here's where it gets really exciting. As you've built your 411, you're going to go into your time block. You're going to go into your schedule. And Gary reminds us that your digital calendar is for appointments with other people. Your paper planner is where you are taking activity and you're turning it into a time block with your future book of business. So in your weekly activities, you've taken your action from your 411 and you start to plug it into your time block. Now, very often we see that part of our week 411 gets to be very, very lengthy. So we have to ask ourselves, am I making a to-do list or am I making a priority-based action plan to achieve my goal? So for example, something that would go on my to-do list is creating a presentation or having different color fonts and changing this and changing that. Well, making a flyer, those are to-dos. They still need to be done, but those are just tasks. You have to ask yourself, where is your true 20%? Where are the priorities of the things that you're going to be doing? So maybe building that presentation, having that open house flyer is not necessarily the task, it's the activity. If you have too many things in your 411 and you can't fit them into your schedule, then you're not working by priority. We need to go back and look at it again. And then if you say, okay, my GPS is good, I'm solid. I made a pivot plan 90 days ago. I've got my 411, I'm ready to go. Maybe it's a 66-day challenge that you want to take on. So the one thing teaches us that on average, it takes 66 days to develop a habit. Maybe the habit you need to develop is time blocking. Maybe you want to develop a habit around the 411. Asking yourself, what habit do you need to create in order for you to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish? Now let's take a deeper look at what time blocking looks like. This is also found in the One Thing, and they've got some great resources online and some free tools if you want to look at the onething.com. Gary teaches us that the first thing that we time block is your time off, right? Jonathan kicked us off with Father's Day. So did you all have Father's Day time blocked in your schedule as time off? We all need it, right? Gary shares with us that those that are people that are successful, they know they're going to need the time off because we work hard, we play hard, even if you don't know where you're going, because right now that's so uncertain for most of us. Travel is a question. Time block it anyway and figure out where you're going later. Maybe it's a staycation, right? The next thing you time block is your one thing. What is your priority? If your priority is taking listings and selling buyers, are you time blocked to do those activities? And then the third thing that Gary reminds us to time block is your planning time, right? Your time to think about your business. This is the place where it'd be great to listen to a podcast. It'd be great to read something. Look at your 411, look at your GPS, and have planning and thinking time to be able to execute. Without thinking and planning time, you're just being reactionary. There's little to no intent when you're just being reactionary. Jonathan, that is my presentation, and I would love to open it up if we have any questions, if there's anything that you'd like for me to go back over again, make sure that we covered it.
Yeah, a quick question. I think the concept of the one thing, it's something that we are beginning to kind of embrace. And I think some of the challenges that agents here, and I believe, I would think 90% of the audience here today are agents. And they are probably asking questions like, what's your advice for people here? How do you begin that prioritizing journey? How do you know that this is a priority? What would you have people to assess what should be their priority?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jonathan. So we all struggle with having more than one thing because we do have more than one thing. The question is, what's the one thing that you're going to focus in on that will make everything else easier or unnecessary? So for example, I'm going to go back to the 7 circles. These could be, and we can have more areas than these. These could be some of the areas in your life. And yet you just ask yourself, what's the one thing that I can do for that one area? So for example, let's pick business, right? Jonathan, go ahead and give me an example for business.
Let's just say I'm trying to establish my GPS on my 135. Now, how do I get my first priority right based on the goal that I'm setting? And I say, and you make a good example, I want to sell 100 houses right now. What should be my number one priority?
So my number one priority would be listing based. So I would ask myself, how many listings do I need to take in order to sell 100 houses? And I know that because maybe my focus is listings. Maybe you have a heavy buyer business and you say to yourself, I'm going to sell 100 houses. I need to have 120 buyer appointments. So to answer the question around the priority to the goal, you have to ask yourself, if I did this, if this was the one thing that I did and I did nothing else, would it allow me to hit my goal? So when you write your priority down, asking yourself that question. It's kind of like checking yourself. What's the one thing that I could do? Is that really that one thing? So I'll give you another great example. Sometimes we see volume and GCI and unit sales. Well, we know that they all have a correlation. So if I want to make $200,000, I'm going to back that up into how many houses do I need to sell?
Yep.
And that's going to be my priority.
Yep. So getting back into the economic model that Gary talks a lot about in the MREA book, that the foundation of how do we derive the equation to hit our goal. And Gary says this a lot of time. I get into his, I'm privileged to get into his masterminds every month. And he says this all the time. If my priorities are not done, I don't earn the right to move on to the next one. Oh, here I can't remember what was the exact words, but something like that. I don't remember, but it's very clear. If I don't do my one thing, everything else is a distraction.
Yes. Yes. And Jonathan, you had it spot on. He does say that until your number one thing is done, everything else is a distraction. And so how often do we all wake up, get into our businesses and go, well, what am I going to do today? Let me go answer my emails. Let me see what text messages I have. Let me see my messages. And that's not working in order of priority. Working in order of priority would be, I'm going to prospect to get the listing appointments or get the buyers under contract that I'm looking to achieve. And then I'm going to go into emails and text messages. Working in priority means working by what's important to you for you to achieve your goal.
Correct. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions from the chat box? Feel free to put it in the chat box right now. If you have any questions for Elizabeth right now, let's keep that 25 minutes that we have right now and 20 minutes that we have right now to kind of have that opportunity to ask Elizabeth anything pertaining to the one thing. And it's still a very new concept for us here to prioritize, because agents here today, they kind of work on sale to sale. A lot of them work on sale to sale basis. I guess that's a pandemic that's going around the world right now, where agents are finding it hard to kind of focus on their goal and their priorities, which and I always say this, agents are addicted to closing transaction. And they find it very difficult to plan structurally in economic model, except for example, and moving through the GPS. So GPS is such a great tool. William have a great question here. We have so many to do and are worried. If you miss out, how do we get that down to the one thing? If you miss out, how do we get that down to the one thing?
Yeah. So if at the core, your 411 in the front of it is your 20%, your most important stuff. You can use the back of the 411 for the 80%, the stuff that's not that important, but still needs to be done, right? So for example, going back to, I'm going to create a listing presentation. Well, my listing presentation is important for my business. However, the priority of prospecting for that appointment is more important, because if I don't have the appointment, what's the point of having the listing presentation? So it exists in your 80%, it's just not a priority. So that means that I'm going to prospect first. And when I'm done with my one thing, my prospecting, then I move on to the right. Sure, I've earned it to go into my listing presentation and work on my listing presentation.
Absolutely. So kicking off the activity that matter most is that's important. We shouldn't be looking at beautifying our flyers until we have enough people to talk to.
That's right. Because yes, exactly right. It's just like our presentation, there is no point in us having beautiful flyers in beautiful colors with the perfect font if we don't have anybody to show it to.
Absolutely. I think the other aspect that I think most agents will struggle with is how do we start that unnatural behavior of prospecting, which is most people struggles with lead generation. Most people struggle with talking to people. And the one they talk about, the 66 days challenge, right? How would you advise someone? And I think a lot of people in our region are facing that challenge where time blocking for lead generation and getting that lead generation done. But how would you advise us to move on in that?
Yeah, Jonathan, that's a great question. So the first thing that I would say is find your strength. Right? All of these models are great, and yet they're not going to work for you if you don't find how you want them to work for you. So going to the lead generation model, what is your strength? And Gary has opened up lead generation to have a definition that's almost anything that you want it to be, right? Through BOLD, we learned that you can contact people via text, via messenger, via email, as long as you're having a two-way. So if picking up the phone and having a conversation is not for you, text messages are, maybe video messaging. We're having some great success with sending folks video messages to be able to connect with people. So the first thing I would say, Jonathan, is find out what works for you. What is your strength? And then do that really well. So for example, if lead generating to time block for 4 hours is a challenge at first, time block for an hour. Go consistently a week for 1 hour. And then next week, add another hour, right? It's just any habit. Think about it like working out, right? If any of you have ever trained for a marathon, you don't just decide to get out of bed one day and go run a marathon. You train for it, you build your body up for it, and lead generation could be the same thing. So what it sounds like is Malaysia needs a 66-day challenge on lead generation with some accountability and some peers. Get yourselves all together and commit. I'm going to at least make 1 hour of lead generation and whatever my strength is.
Yeah. And it may not be just times a specific. It could be, I need to make 5 contacts a day. I need to make 10 contacts a day. It could be that way as a start, right? There you go.
Absolutely, Jonathan. You know, thinking about what is it that is going to allow you to get closer to your goal. So looking at your numbers of your business to be able to tell you where your gap is, right? So maybe, for example, we're doing great on contacts. We're talking to a lot of people, but we're not making any appointments. Well, if we're not making any appointments, maybe our focus should be getting that appointment. Doesn't matter how many people I talk to or how much time I spent on it. What is your end game? What are you missing in your business?
That's absolutely. And that's how Shift talks about finding the right people to lead generate on, not just lead generating to everyone that you have not met before. Right?
It's finding the motivated. It's finding the people that are ready, willing, and able to transact in real estate.
Absolutely. That's a great question here by Naki. How do we find the right balance for all the wanting in the 7 circles?
Ooh, that is a great question. So the short answer is putting them in order of priority and then time blocking them, right? So I'll give you an example. It is important for me to have good physical health. I enjoy boxing. That's my sport of choice, okay? Boxing is in my schedule and where it exists in my world twice a week. Now, spending time with my daughter who is 16, and I got to get every moment I can with her at this age, that's important to me too. So I have her time blocked in the afternoon. So when you look at your circles and you ask yourselves, what are the most important ones? So first part is putting them in order of priority. And then second of all is going into your schedule and time blocking. When you live by the principles of the one thing, your life exists with a counterbalance. Because the one thing teaches us that a balanced life is a myth. There's no such thing. You can't have a balanced life, but you can have a counterbalanced life, right? So the example in the one thing is that of a surfer. When you're on a surfboard, surfers are not standing completely still attempting to balance. You watch a surfer's body movement, they're constantly balancing out that board. And so your 7 circles are counterbalancing. Maybe one week you spend an hour with your physical health. Maybe the next week you only spend 30 minutes because something else is a priority. Give yourself permission to allow your priorities to change every week and then time block the ones that are the most important to you.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a very good answer. I mean, counterbalancing by putting the right priorities in place first. That's the first domino, right? Because then you know what's important. And it's a lot of reflection, isn't it? You got to reflect, you got to ask yourself that questions, deep question, and it's pretty some in-depth thoughts that we all have to do in our lives constantly because it changes, like you say, it changes, right? We did have COVID-19 3 months ago, and we spent lesser time with our family. Now we spend so much time with our family in the past 90 days. We've already made up for the whole year. There you go.
Yeah, Jonathan, you're not wrong. You're not wrong about that. And to your point, you know, John Maxwell years ago said that every leader needs to have what he referred to as blank space in his schedule. And blank space was that time to think. It was, to your point, the time to make the plans, to look at the priorities. If you don't stop to think about what your priorities are, you could be doing everything and anything and you're not doing what matters the most.
That's right. That's right. There's another great question here by Faisal. It's kind of a 2-part follow-up question. Did you alter, and it's probably addressed to you, Elizabeth, did you alter your own GPS after COVID-19 for the year 2020? And the
I
follow-up
sure
would
did,
be,
Jonathan.
what was
Yeah.
it the same as before the pandemic strikes?
That's a great question. And I love you guys for asking that. It absolutely changed. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to be in Austin the week that Gary closed international. I was traveling for training. And so the same week that he closed international was the same week I was supposed to be there. And he gave us the order as MAPS coaches. And he said, start with yourselves, take out your GPS, pivot, and changed it. So what ended up changing in my GPS was not my goal. My goal for the year stayed the same. What changed is how was I going to get to that goal? And I also gave myself some flexibility that it was going to take me a little longer than expected. So for example, the businesses that I am entrusted with, we run a 10-month year. So technically October would have been our end of the year. We're now extending that to allow us to get into November because COVID may have cost us a little more time. So we want to give ourselves a little more time to hit goal. And then our priorities actually got, if you can believe it, more specific, and they came with a sense of urgency because
Yep,
now we don't feel like we have all the time in the world to do this because COVID has accelerated our focus.
absolutely. And did you of your GPS or only a portion of it?
The whole GPS, the
Uh,
whole GPS. So I started thinking that I could just change a little bit, and it turned out that I needed to start all over again. So my goal stayed the same, but how my thought process. So for example, I had it on there that I was going to have so many one thing trainings and certifications. Well, now not being able to travel in large rooms, that changed into now I need more virtual, less in person
yeah,
because I have more time to do them since we're not traveling. So they just changed how I was going to accomplish it. It's a great
absolutely.
question.
Absolutely. And in our whole region, we did the same thing. We basically threw out our entire GPS for 2020 out the wall. And we are beginning to work on 30-60-90s every 3 months with the same goal in place. Because
Yes.
that's how fluid and how unpredictable where we are right now. There you go. Do you guys have any more questions? Can you kind of put that in the chat box? There's a question here by Jimmy. I'm not very clear, Jimmy. It says that, can you clarify more about focus, big picture and small focus? I'm not sure about Jimmy. Jimmy, can you rephrase your question? Because I don't understand the question. That will be helpful for us so that we could kind of be able to be clear in asking that question. Elizabeth, okay, there you go. Elizabeth, can you explain a little bit about your role as a MAPS coach here? Because I think MAPS coaching is something very, very new. We have not introduced that in our region right now. We have
Sure.
productivity coaches, but could you briefly explain what do you do as a MAPS coach?
Oh, I love this question because I get to share my passion. As a MAPS coach, we help you get to where you want to get to. I like to think a little faster, sometimes a little smarter, and you save a little bit of money by getting there, right? Shortcuts. So as a MAPS coach, I work one-on-one, and I refer to them as business owners. You all own your own businesses. So we work with you one-on-one every week. We have 30-minute sessions, and we are focusing in on your goals. And so it's custom. And we talk about what are your strengths. So Jonathan, if I was in business with you, I would say, let me look at your business. Let's look at your money. How are we going to be profitable? What are your models running like in your business? What do your systems and tools look like? So are we using Command for our smart plans? How are we using Command to help you get your leads? How are you running your business with it, right? So MAPS coaching is custom. It is one-on-one so that we can partner with you to achieve your goals. So I work with teams that are 3 and 4 people, and I work with big expansion teams that sell over 1,000 houses, and we work with them in their business models. So ideally, it is whatever is important to you. We help you through accountability, through the models. MAPS coaches are all versed in all of Gary's models, so we coach to the Red Book, to the Shift Book.
Got it. Got it. So very customizable and highly accountable relationship that you get into. Um, and and can I ask you another personal question if you don't mind? What's
Not at
that?
all.
Because I know you get you were running a team. I believe you used to be running a team. Or are you still running a team in real estate right now? What was that reason of you shifting to coaching?
Jonathan, I knew that I could reach more people, have a bigger impact if I taught others how to do what was working really well and successful in the company. So for example, in Colorado, there's only so many houses I can sell, right? There's only so far my team can go. However, as a MAPS coach, I have 47 partners across the world, and helping them is like the trickle effect, because
Yes.
now I help them do what they want to do, then they can do that in their communities. And I just feel like one of my personal mantras is be the change that you want to see in the world. And so if I want to be the change, how can I impact businesses to have them impact in their communities and spread the world, do good all around the world?
Awesome, awesome. And you mentioned you have been coaching a lot of teams, people who individual agents, so solo agents. You coach small teams. You coach big teams who are doing 1,000 properties a year in terms of sales. What are some of the common denominators that keep them in place of their goal, who keep them in check, that they are always consistently hitting their goals? What are some of the common denominators, which, if you don't mind sharing?
Not at all, Jonathan. I'll tell you that one of the biggest ones I see is the use of the actual tools. So for example, the majority of the folks in my roster schedule send me their 411 every Sunday night. And so that tells me that they are in their business. They've done their thinking time. They stop, they look at their business, they look at their numbers. Where are they for this time of the year, the month, the week? And when they submit their 411, it is very clear that these are their priorities. They never have more than 5. They have a minimum of 3 priorities for the week. And as we do in our coaching calls, okay, how are you doing with your priority? Are you on track this week? So the tool of the 411 with the accountability through coaching, and they are big thinkers. So they are coachable. They want to hear what we have to say and listen to the questions that we ask to help them how to think. And so they're taking the tools and actually implementing them, I would say, is one of the biggest denominators of success that I've seen.
And there is always that numerological relationship in everything that they do. The numbers show up, right? The consistent good producing agents, their numbers are always clear.
They're literally use it like a GPS, a roadmap, right? So for example, in one of our larger expansion teams, when we looked at the numbers were telling us that we were getting a lot of incoming leads. However, we were not converting them at a high level. So it wasn't about, are they making the appointments? We weren't even converting to make the appointments. And so the numbers tell you a story. And right now, especially because of COVID, we're looking at them like they were vitals. You know, they're the vitals of your business. Is your business healthy? Is your business on life support? What area do you need to focus in on? And the numbers just tell you that. Instead of you thinking, oh, should I work more on my conversion? Should I work more on my appointment closed? Look at your numbers and let your numbers tell you where is it that you need to focus in the most.
Absolutely. And a lot of times I see agents in our region, they focus on increasing their skills, but not looking at what are the things that should be worked on. Because the skill part, it's not relevant until you know what skill that can brings you that whole formula of numbers coming in, right?
That's exactly right, Jonathan. Right? If we have a lot of leads coming in and we're not booking the appointment, that skill set there is different than the skill set of being at the appointment and not converting it to close.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you mind sharing some of the vital signs that for this season, in this crisis that we are in right now? What are some of the key vital signs you would advise, especially individual agents right now? Because I think we've got a high percentage of individual agents here in this call. What are some of the key metrics of vital signs that you would advise us to monitor on that is critical for us right now?
Jonathan, that's a powerful question. Right now, it is your pipeline. And be very clear about what your pipeline means to you. So for example, if you're looking at this in a 30, 60, and 90 days, if there are people, names in your pipeline, and they're in your 30-day, then you need to know without a doubt that they are ready, able, and willing to transact. And so if you're looking at your pipeline and do you have enough, the first thing would be, do you have enough people in your pipeline to support your goal? And are they truly 30-day business? So this is where you get to look at a name and you need to say to yourself, okay, are they really ready, willing, and able to transact in the next 30 days? If they're not, Do they go 60? Do they go 90? Or do they need to go into your command because they're not ready at all? So the best thing, that it's almost like I hope you feel my passion and urgency around being very, very clear that the people that are in your pipeline are going to bring you money in the next 30 or 60, 90 days. If you don't have enough, then we got to go fish and go look for them. And if they're in there, then focusing in on converting them. So the skill around converting them right now is really asking some of these hard questions to the people in your pipeline. So for example, we're watching what the market is doing. Right now, we are very low inventory and interest rate is still very low. So we're almost like at a gridlock. Nobody wants to sell their house and you have a lot of buyers that want to buy houses. And so now the conversation with our sellers are, what if you miss the market? What if the market, because we're still expecting foreclosures and some things to change with the economy as we go in, what if you miss the market? So the conversion piece of what's in your pipeline, don't be scared to have very serious conversations with the people in there. What happens if you miss the mark?
Yeah, that's interesting because in Malaysia right now, we have a lot of sellers and not many buyers. It's now a buyer's market right now. And the buyers are hoping for major price correction. The owners are hoping for a recovery in the market. So that's where a lot of them are. And that's where there's opportunity for us because we can find the right fit, right? Because there is more need for agents right now than ever because of that situation that we are in right now.
That's right. Great. That's a beautiful market right there.
There you go. How would you advise agents right now to behave in a buyer's market?
I would say to be listing focused, because when you have the commodity, you always have a paycheck, and have those conversations with the buyers. Look at your trends, right? I love how our company makes us business owners more than just salespeople. We're not selling people on something. We're helping people to achieve their dreams. And so have a deeper conversation around the trends. I would look back at your data in your market and look for historical trends and say, what if the market changes in this direction? What if the market goes in that direction? Why wait for something that you don't know is going to happen? Why not buy when you know what you're looking at?
Yeah, awesome. That's good. That's good. Let's just kind of switch gears a little bit and move back to a little bit of the mindset challenge. There is this constant struggle for some agents to kind of find their big why, right? To kind of get a clarity of their big why. How would you advise agents who are struggling to get clarity in their big why? Is a big why a long-term big why, a middle-term big why, short-term big why? How would you help someone to do that?
Yeah, your why right now just needs to be the reason why you get out of bed in the morning. We don't have to make it too complicated. And so you can have a big why. Like there are folks that we talk to that they have ideas of maybe having a foundation one day. They want to have a charity. They've got something really, really big that they're working towards. And then there are folks that just say, I just need to provide for my family right now, right? We're in an economic time of uncertainty. And so how do you just provide for your family and start saving some money? So your big why doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be important to you. And by asking yourself, why do I get out of bed in the morning? Why do I do what I need to do? And Jonathan, this goes back to reflecting time and to thinking time, journaling out and just writing to yourself what is important to you. And it's not necessarily money. It's not necessarily things. It's usually what money and things bring you. So for example, if we have money to take our family to vacation the day that we get to do something like that again, if that's what's important to you, then that's what's driving you. So at the very simplest, ask yourself, why do you do what you do? Why are you even selling real estate?
Yeah. And that's sometimes not easy because everything is so distracting and everyone wants to achieve so many things in their life, but it's so difficult to pause. And in Asia, I think it's even more challenging because it's really very fast. In Asia, with Asian people, the traffic jams are terrible. I mean, I've been to Dallas, I've been to Austin, I've been to Florida. The traffic jam is nothing. Traffic jam is horrible here, and it's hard to focus on that concept of a big why, establishing a big why, right? So you just rightly put it. Be very simple, be very purposeful and very simple in short-term goals first. That could be a start.
Absolutely, it could be a start because not all of us have goals that take us years out. right? That there are some people that have vision, they go 5, they go 10 years out, and that's fine. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Ask yourself this question.
Yeah.
What's important to me? Why do I get out of bed in the morning?
Correct. And that's a simple question. What's important to me? Why do I get out of bed and do what I do every day? Yeah, because sometimes we get confused because we might be reading a book on Steve Jobs and we start thinking we should think like Steve Jobs, right? 50 years ahead, changing, making a dent in this world, changing the whole industry. That's a huge goal. And some of us will get there, right? But I think generally to start off with, the habit of thinking of a big why is to ask yourself these 2 questions. Virtual support, could you please help me type that in so that everyone gets that clearly? Sorry, just quickly, can you help me say that again, Elizabeth?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is simply, why do you get out of bed in the morning and what is important to you?
Absolutely. Why do you get out of the bed in the morning and why is this important to you? And if you could answer this 2 questions clearly in a consistent time, I think that would help us closer to our one thing, our big why. Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from the chat box? Anyone else have any questions that you want to quickly ask? So that we can make the most of the opportunity that we have here with Elizabeth. All right. What are some of the questions you kind of ask coaches when you kind of see them getting out of alignment? What are some of the questions that you will ask them to help them come back to that alignment?
Yeah, I love that question, Jonathan. The question that I start out with, did your goal change and you forgot to tell me? You know, are we going in a different direction, right? You think about that GPS. If the goal is still the same, we may get there with alternate routes, and yet we're still going to get to the goal. So did the goal change and you forget to tell me because I'm ready for a coaching session and I thought we were going this way? And now it looks like you're telling me we're going this way. So what changed?
That's good. Because sometimes people don't realize they changed.
No, because we hear an inspiring story. We watch a great video on command. We hear about somebody that had a great success story, and that's wonderful. However, that's their success story. That's not yours, right? And so we have to ask ourselves what changed, and if it changed, that takes a deeper conversation, right? Because sometimes, I mean, let's look at it, Jonathan. 90 days ago, the world changed. You know, actually, probably longer than that, the world changed. And yet, how are we going to accomplish what we want to accomplish within that? So if your goal, that's why when I started us out, I said our goal didn't change, just our priorities did. The world can change outside, but our goals didn't change.
Awesome. That's a good question. I like that. Virtual support, can you write that there? Can you quickly say that question again? I'm sorry, because that's a very good question.
Absolutely.
And if you have some coaches here right now, I think if you ask this question with purpose, I think you will get a good answer from the coaches. Do you mind quickly saying that again, Elizabeth?
Yeah, coaches. So the question is, did your goal change and did you forget to tell me?
Right. That's a very provocative question. Yeah. What are some of the is it normal to feel low and change activity when we kind of have a straight stretch of rejections from lead generation? I've got a good question here from May. Is it normal to feel low and change and pivot our activities when we have a straight stretch of rejections from lead generation? How would you comment to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing I'm going to ask is that really the problem? Is the bad streak, right? Let's just say that we're getting a lot of no's, we're not being successful. Is what's really the problem at hand? So for example, maybe it is a skill set. Maybe I'm not asking the right questions or I'm not saying the right things, and therefore I'm getting the no's. Or let's just say that it's not a source that is your strength. It's not something that you normally do that you have a proven track record in. So I would ask you to try something for a certain period of time. So let's just say that you say to yourself, I'm going to do this activity for a week. And if at the end of the week, I don't see any changes, I have to do something different. And that's where it'd be great to have a colleague or have one of your productivity coaches come in and say, this is the activity that I've done. this is the script that I've used, and these are my results. Help me identify, do I need to change what I'm doing, or do I need to change what I'm saying?
Yeah. And sometimes change who I'm speaking to. Because I could be speaking to the wrong,
Absolutely.
I could be speaking to the wrong people. And in this season right now, in this market, it is more important to be purposeful about who we want to spend our time with and who we speak to. Because not everyone is ready to buy, right? Not everyone is ready to sell. So that's probably it. And it's not about the thing that we do, it's about how, who, and when, and what are the methods that we are doing it, right?
Yeah. And our numbers may have changed.
Yep.
Before COVID, we used to have a stat that said that for every 40 people you talk to, for every 20, you got 2 appointments. So before COVID, we said you talk to 20 people, you get to 2 appointments. After COVID, now we're talking 40 people to 1 appointment. And so the market has changed on us just the same way that we've responded to COVID. And so what do we have to do differently now that we weren't doing before in order for us to get the same results?
Absolutely. It's doubling down on the activities, right? To match or even have half of what the expected results that we can get.
Yes.
Right. Awesome. Moving forward in this season, we are talking about shift a lot. Bow Pivot, the group that James Shaw has created, has I think most of us are in that group right now. And we talk a lot about market share. How do we win market share from the market? What are some of your advice to agents right now? How can we go out there and win market share right now?
Yeah. The first thing I would recommend is whatever you decide to do it consistently. When taking market share, when taking territory, you need to work your plan consistently. So this is not something that you're going to decide, oh, I'm going to go work my market share and I'm going to get more. I'm going to do this today, and then I'm not going to do it again for another couple of weeks. That's not going to work. So the first thing is decide you're going to be consistent. The second thing is that start in a small circle, get yourself proven success, and then go yourself outward, almost like a bullseye, like a target, right? Yeah. So if I'm going to take territory, determine what is that territory. Is it my neighborhood? Is it an area that I'm going to geographically farm and focus in on? What is that area? Start small, do it consistently, and keep it manageable. And then as you have successes in there, and then continue to open that up, and then you take a larger territory that way.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, be very purposeful about it. Excellent answer. We've got a question probably from a coach. I think he's a coach. Yes, he's a coach. How do we help coaches clarify their goal? Sometimes they come in and they are also not sure about what they want.
Yes, that is one of my favorite questions. So coach, the first thing I'm going to tell you is prepare to spend a long time focusing in on that one thing. When someone comes to work with me for the first time and we're talking about what their goal is, I will spend probably 45 to an hour and a half, sometimes 90 minutes, anywhere between 45 to 90 minutes, only talking about the goal. So let me give you some questions that you can ask. So the first thing is, I'm just going to give you an example. Okay, you're sharing with me that your goal is to sell 100 houses. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. I want to know why selling 100 houses is so important. And then I say to them, okay, so tell me what your world would look like if you sold 100 houses. So you visualize, what does your world look like when you accomplish that? And then I'm going to ask you, would it be okay if we only sold 90 houses instead of 100? And you may tell me that that's okay. And then that makes me have a question mark. Are you really committed to the 100? Because you just told me that 90 was okay. So then I have to ask you, is selling 85 houses okay? Well, yeah, maybe it might be all right. Okay, so if selling 85 houses is okay, is selling 80? And I'm going to play this number game until you tell me, no, it's absolutely, I have to sell 75 houses. I can't sell a single house less. Because what tends to happen is when we set goals that are, they're thinking big, and that's great, but they may not mean anything to us. And if your goal doesn't mean anything to you, it's not important for you to achieve it, and therefore you won't do the activities necessary to achieve it. When we know why our goal is important to us, The next thing that I would ask is, so you're telling me that 75 houses, that is your drop bottom number. That's exactly what you need to sell. You've told me why that's important to you. And then I'm going to ask you, are you willing to do whatever it takes? Because if you're willing to do whatever it takes, then I'm going to hold you accountable to whatever you're telling me it's going to take in order for you to achieve this goal.
Wow, awesome. So driving very deep down into the whys and challenging the goals, because a lot of people kind of put a decision on the goal, plucking some numbers from the air, right? And that's how you kind of help them think through what is necessary for them right now.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a way?
Coaches,
sorry,
Jonathan, I just want to offer your, I'm sorry, if I may,
go ahead,
I just want to offer your, I want to offer all of your productivity coaches. I'm going to switch the screen to my contact information. Sure. Reach out to me with any specific questions that you may have, and I am happy to give you coaching questions to help people get drilled down and deeper and support you in your coaching programs.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We are still very new into the coaching system right now in KW. So we are only less than a year as a region. But thank you for offering that. So coaches on this call, if you know who you are, Elizabeth is willing to help by providing certain good questions as tools for you to kind of have that conversation with the agents. Okay, cool. Is there any question that I'm supposed to ask you and I didn't ask you?
I would ask, do you know your one thing?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. That's a very, very good question. I hope everyone in this call is able to absorb and capture that provocative question to help us find that clarity, because we don't fight the current uncertainty with certainty, we fight it with clarity. And that one thing, it's the absolute message for this season, right? Awesome. You might hang in while, Elizabeth. I'm going to go to the announcements right now because of time. I'm going to go to the announcements and I'll come back to you for some last thoughts. Virtual support, can I have the announcements, please? Awesome. Yes, so you'll be pleased to know we have managed to secure Nick Wagner, who is an owner of a team that is very successful in the US. He will be speaking to us on the 2nd of July on Thursday, 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. The topic will be learning to build essential steps in building your own successful business models. He has a team, he has actually the leading number one team in the office in Maryland, US. He has 16 years of experience in real estate. So he will be coming live from us in the US on the 2nd of July. And just a little bit of a snippet, we managed to secure a celebrity agent by the name of Jeff Cohn. So Jeff Cohn will be speaking to us from Omaha, Nebraska. He was the number one Berkshire Hathaway agent out of Warren Buffett's business, and he decided to join KW in January. And I had a call with him on Friday, and he's so excited to speak to all of us. I think it's on the 17th of July, but I will clarify with you all as we move on the way. So there are a lot of interesting and exciting speakers coming along the way that we are trying to bring from the US to kind of help us go through this season of crisis. At the same time, I also believe there's a season of opportunity. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, this is for internal agents in Redfield, Keller Williams. On Wednesday, 8:45 a.m. sharp till 10:30 a.m., we will be having a state of the company. Now, it's kind of like our town hall that we do every year, but this is kind of a virtual town hall. We kind of expect all of us to be inside that call. I hope to see 750 people in that call on Wednesday morning at 8:45. We are very pleased to be joined by KW Worldwide's President Bill Sotroff will be on the call with us together with the Vice President JP Lewis. They'll be on the call with us to kind of address to us the current situation in the market and have a global perspective, and also an in-depth perspective of what are some of the things that we are doing, that the whole entire world is doing in the area of real estate. There's some trends that are coming off very, very interesting. So I think Bill and JP will be with us, and we'll be having a lot of announcements and a lot of updates of how we are doing business in Malaysia. So all KW Malaysia agents, please make sure that you get that link. I think it has already been sent out by your market center support staff this evening. You should have received it already. If you have not, please reach out to your market center support or your MCAs in your market center so that you should not miss this call. So please time block in your calendar at 8:45 a.m. It was very, we are very privileged to have both JP and also Bill Soteroff to address us and to speak to us in that state of the company for 2020 first half. So that's the end of the announcement. Back to you, Elizabeth. What is that one thing that you want to leave with us before we kind of part ways right now? What is that one thing you want to share with us right now?
Jonathan, I thank you, and I thank Malaysia for this opportunity. I'm going to bring you something out of the one thing, and it says, success is actually a short race, a sprint fueled by discipline, just long enough for a habit to kick in and take over. Wow. Thank you for the privilege, Malaysia. It has been absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you for taking time of your business to share that one thing with us. And I know it's a privilege and honor to have you on this call. I hope to see you next round, or whenever we are at family reunion, we'll catch up, and thank you. Thank you very much. If you're ever in Malaysia, please let us know. We'll be very happy to host you. For the rest of us,
that'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. It's 10:30 p.m. So still have half an hour more for your beers or your drinks. Have a good time, and I will see you next training. Thank you very much, guys. You all have a good one. Bye.